Hordates is a type of pinopsid and a type of pine, but it's very different than the modern pines because it's got a leaf. It's a lance-shaped leaf about this long and widens to about 4 inches in the middle. And so it doesn't look at anything like a modern pine. That's the closest thing to a modern pine. Horsetails would be small forms of some of the trees, and club mosses. Club moss trees are the big trees in this system. That's the closest thing to modern normal names I can get.
Is coal only found in certain parts of the world?
Yes, and different coals in different parts of the world. The southern hemisphere coals are completely different. They have no similarity in trees, no similarity on, and the southern hemisphere coals are accepted by everyone as being allochthonous, meaning they all floated into place and accumulated from water and deposited from water. And there's a different type, different set, and they're from a different level in the fossil record too. These things are found in the Carboniferous. The southern coals are Permian, they're younger. And then the coals of the Williston Basin are younger than that, and they're made of different trees than these. And so most people think of coal, they think of the eastern U.S., western Europe coal, the Carboniferous coals. But there are a number of different coal types in the world. They're all in different geographic locations, and they're made from different trees, different plants.
Could you speak briefly to what topographically you would presume that the Earth pre-flood, what it looked like? You have floating forests.
This week, I would say that
We're talking geographically different.
yeah. First of all, I would say roughly, and again, this is this week's idea, and it's going to be changing because the amount of data we have bearing on this is limited, and our theories are still developing. But I would say roughly about 1/3 of the Earth was probably covered with water, ocean. About 1/3 of the Earth was covered with land, as we would now understand it, and about 1/3 was a floating ocean, a floating forest. So roughly 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. And there's a possibility that the modern continents, there was at least one additional continent as a possibility. This is, as of about a year ago, this is my crazy idea. And that continent was completely destroyed in the flood, and that continent was where humans were. That none of the current continents were the location of humans. The modern continents were about 60% covered with water, shallow ocean water, and where it was land is where the dinosaurs and gymnospermous plants resided. I think humans were on a completely different continent, and I think that continent was, with the mammals, that continent was completely destroyed in the flood. It doesn't exist on the surface, and probably sank into the mantle. But again, that's this week's idea.
Just kind of a follow-up in terms of correlating your hypothesis with Scripture. Where do you see intersections or support one for the other?
The age I'm getting out of this is entirely from Scripture and not at all from, pretty much not from physical data at all. The nature of the flood in the sense of its destructiveness is an inference from Scripture. I'm inferring, the only thing I really inferred about the flood here was that there were big waves. I would expect big waves would mess up this forest. And also, where I currently place the beginning of the flood and the end of the flood in the fossil record is based upon sediments being found across entire continents. I figure when you have sediments that you can trace across an entire continent, you have a global ocean. And the biblical account tells us the earth was flooded globally, and so that's where I put it from the Ediacaran through the Cretaceous is underwater, is in the midst of the global ocean as the Bible would describe it. Creation, obviously, I'm assuming this, the only way this thing could really come into being in the first place is if it was created in place. So that would jive with a biblical account where it's created in complete, suddenly, and not formed over the course of time. Those are the areas where I see the overlap. The overlap is minimal in this area, this part of our research. Okay, there was a hand over here.
Next, do you think this bond for floating forests would also apply to, let's say, western golden classes, the western interior there, let's say, Paleocene, Paleocene?
Nope. No, I don't think it has anything to do with them. It's a completely different set of plants. It's actually what I consider to be truly terrestrial plants, plants that live on the land. However, what I do believe is that those forests were also, they were destroyed later, because this forest, basically being at ocean level, was destroyed first. Then the flood made its way onto the land and began picking off the forests of the land. They picked off the southern hemisphere forests apparently first because, I would presume, because they were closer to the ocean. I haven't studied them, and it'd be interesting to study the difference between those and the angiosperm, gymnosperm forests, which you find, and there what's going on there is that those things are not, back up a little bit, if all you're made of is bark, then it doesn't take long rolling against log against log to destroy the logs completely and sink out of sight, okay? But as I'm going to say in the next talk, it's different when you've got secondary wood. When let's say you've peeled all the bark off, you've still got something that floats. In fact, you've got something that can float for centuries. And I would suggest that the secondary wood trees of the earth floated through the flood and then get deposited as the flood is waning, is leaving the continents. And that's the source of your western coals and your Canadian coals. But that's a different forest and a different mechanism.
You all did study Phil Costico?
Even better, the Trimerophytes and the Zostrophilites and the